Hello, School Transportation Nation. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Tony Corpin, publisher and president of STN. This podcast is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software, and our friends at Zoom, the leader in modernizing student transportation. We've got Mr. Ryan Gray with us, always an editorial phenom. Ryan, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Good to be back as always.
Excellent. And going to be talking with Jennifer Vobis, the Executive Director of Transportation at Clark County School District, Las Vegas. For those of you know, home of the Super Bowl, right? Like, you guys, Super Bowl, was it exciting? Was it fun? You know, who are you rooting for? Niners, Chiefs? You know, the outcome, we just don't know today. But when this podcast comes out, you'll know. All right, guys, Jennifer's also the winner of the 2022 School Transportation News Transportation Director of the Year Award. So she's a fountain of knowledge there at Clark County. So we're going to get a quick update on everything happening over there with them. And I believe, Ryan, if I'm not mistaken, are they the largest public fleet in North America?
Yeah, I believe they have the largest public fleet, so not private. That would go to First Student and several other contractors. But in terms of publicly owned school buses, you know, at a school district, yes. Of course, you also have South Carolina, which is a state owned fleet. So there's a little bit of like nuance there. But yes, basically, you're correct.
Wonderful. Well, we got lots of headlines. I'm going to dive right in, but we got a quick message from our partner, Zoom. This message is brought to you by Zoom, the leader in modernizing student transportation. Are you tired of the status quo and the same outdated school transportation outcomes? School districts nationwide, including Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, Seattle, Howard County, Maryland, and Reading, Pennsylvania, have chosen a new school transportation provider, Zoom. Zoom has transformed the yellow school bus experience, bringing world-class technology and operations that the industry has never had access to before. School districts are gravitating to Zoom for their turnkey approach that leads to unprecedented outcomes, including optimized routes, reduced commute times, the ability to track kids to and from school on the bus, and improved communication via an app connecting parents, drivers, and school administrators. All the while saving significant dollars that the school district can put back in the classroom. The future of student transportation is here. To learn more, visit Zoom at www.ridezum.com. That's www.ridezum.com to learn more. All right, Ryan, hit us with the top headlines. I think Bluebird had some earnings, right? They had an earnings smasher and the stock popped last week.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had seen, obviously, the last several years when we were in the midst of COVID and a lot of the supply chain challenges that arose from that, or at least were exacerbated by COVID. Bluebird, was down in its earnings. Well, they've really been skyrocketing back to the forefront. So they, as you mentioned, they had a huge 2024 first quarter results last week. The unit sales were up 9% from a year ago. Grew revenue by 35% to $318 million. So, a lot of that is being driven, of course, by electric school buses. Bluebird last year opened its new electric facility. Will basically repurpose some of their existing manufacturing facility to focus primarily or solely on electric school buses. Looking to eventually ramp that up to about 5,000 a year. Certainly electric school buses, as we've been noting, really the hot new ticket item from a lot of these school bus manufacturers.
Yeah, I find it interesting too. They've been on the rise with a lot of the conversations. Obviously, we know they're making a big play, obviously, in the propane space too, being the only provider now with an engine solution through Roush Cleantech. So we'll see if that doesn't also buoy earnings for them in the future. But clearly, EV is a big mover, and we'll see. I don't know necessarily looking at these numbers if the LA Unified order, which I believe LA Unified Unified had awarded a very large order to Bluebird, specifically around that. That was kind of a big mover in these numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that they just Bluebird said they received that order for 180 school buses in January, last month, January 16th, or that time frame. So yeah, not exactly sure. That sounds to me like that's an order. So I don't think that number necessarily is reflected, but it's an indicator, I think, of what's to come. Certainly here we are, we're right on the, as this podcast comes out, we're right on the deadline of the latest EPA Clean School Bus rebate. So, folks, if you have not done all your due diligence and submitted all your information, you have literally hours from the time that you're listening to this podcast. But we know that the buses from the 2022 rebate, that first foray, they have mostly been delivered. We actually have an article coming up in March that talks with several school districts with experience and looking, primarily at their infrastructure and how they've set everything up so they can actually get those buses on the road rather than just sitting in a parking lot somewhere. But we're going to continue to see this. I mean, EPA announced the winners of its competitive grant that ran last summer. That announcement came out in the fall. So school districts will start receiving those buses this year. And we're going to see, obviously, the numbers balloon from that. So, really expect to see more financial news, such as what Bluebird delivered, at least from the publicly held companies, to really indicate some of those revenue spikes tied directly to electric.
Well, we also have our Green Bus Summit, Ryan. I know we've been working with everybody, kind of herding the cats, as we say, right? Making sure we get everything ready for this summer. So that's really exciting at STN Expo. We kick off in Indianapolis May 31st through June 4th. That GBS is 2 days with a ride and drive, educational immersion. I know we're doing a lot in workforce development specifically because as everybody adjusts to this new normal, the fleets, there's definitely a learning curve for everyone involved in how to maintain these vehicles. What's the life cycle look like? How do drivers perform in them? I know we've been talking a lot about it, but this is where we start to really elevate the conversation. So if you have a lot to do with the green footprint at your school district or company, STN Expo and Green Bus Summit is definitely the place for you. And we also have another version of this in Reno, which is our flagship show, STN Expo in Reno, Nevada. That is July 12th through the 17th, which our GBS, as we call it, takes place on the 14th, which is the Sunday. Full day education. We have our Green Bus Fleet Awards, kind of identifying key winners and pioneers in the area of green energy. That could be propane, electric. Those have been necessarily the winners in multiple categories. Got rural, small, medium, large, and then regional contractor, as well as large national contractor. So lots of categories there. We'll be opening up nominations for that. So if you guys have to do with that, please go to the STN website, check out our nomination. We'll have a story up pretty soon to discuss all the good stuff happening at STN Expo and Green Bus Summit. Ryan, we also got other top headlines. What else is going on in the industry?
Well, unfortunately, we've had some fatalities. Some students killed trying to board or exit their school bus by illegal passers. One of those happened. The child Adeline Pierce. She died last week. She was actually hit on February 1st. She was hospitalized for several days, and she was 8 years old, finally succumbed to her injuries. Very tragic. And it's actually sprung a petition for a new Addie's Law. So as last I saw, there was about 8,000 signatures on change.org. It's heartbreaking to continue to see these things happen. We've written extensively about, obviously, the illegal passing pandemic, let's say, and without forgetting that, historically, there's more kids that are killed by their school bus drivers. So Obviously tragedies all around. It just harkens back to the need for increased training. I know we discussed this recently, coming up in editorial that we're looking at, and this current month in February, with a danger zone piece by Taylor Ekbatani, that it just the vigilance and the diligence that we just have to continue to do as much as possible in this industry. And it's kind of interesting. We actually have a web poll up for the month of February. So it's only been up for about a week and a half or so. But we asked, what would most increase student safety in the danger zone? And we provide the options of driver training, student training, technology, or community training. And as I look at it right now, student training is in the lead, 43.3%, followed by driver training, 30%, community training, 23.33%, and technology, Tony, only 3.33%. So folks, our readers definitely weighing in on training. And that's really the title of Taylor's article this month, where, you don't forget the person in this whole aspect. There is a lot of technology that's out there, but the technology is useless if you don't have folks training on how to use it, how to install and implement proper procedures at school bus stops, how drivers actually operate the technology, or operate just their loading lights and their stop arms. Again, we always hate to see these fatalities, and I've said this before and I'll say it again. We just have to make sure that these students who do die, that they don't die in vain.
Yeah, that's interesting, the results of that, Ryan. I know, with STN Expo Indianapolis, we're rolling out our Bus Technology Summit laboratories, which is in essence teaching people how to use the technology properly and really get training from the manufacturers at the conference. So I love this feedback because it's really helpful to look at what is needed to improve safety. And there's a lot of opinions out there, right? Mm-hmm. My first jump was, hey, technology definitely would improve the safety, but I totally agree. Student training, community training, staff training, all those are key, right? Maybe you need like all of the above as like a response there, Ryan. I feel like everybody thinks everything, right? They want it all. It's just a question of how do you implement that effectively? And, I know you try really hard at the conferences to put forward education and training with all the experts to really take a deep dive on this. So I'm excited to see what this summer looks like at STN Expo with all this. And this information only kind of solidifies what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I love seeing that. And guys, don't forget, you can save $200 with super early bird registration, stnexpo.com. The agendas are both up at both conferences. We're working to build them out a little larger with more information, but you can never go check that out and find a little more out about how you can up your training game. Ryan, what other top headlines we see out there in the industry?
Okay, Tony. So under the radar, on February 2nd, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration announced an NPRM, Notice for Proposed Rulemaking, that really is looking to address some of the driver shortage problems, challenges with the CDL process, and not simply for school bus drivers, but they certainly mention school bus drivers in here. So as most of you out there in the nation know, currently states can administer the CDL tests to applicants that are domiciled or live in another state, provided that individual has obtained training in the state where the skills test will be administered. And a lot of this factors in for contractors too, especially if they're operating in different states, and they might need to move drivers around. This NPR proposes to remove a requirement that the applicant must have obtained training in the testing state in order to take the CDL skills test in that state. Basically, again, trying to open things up a little bit. It's proposing to allow states discretion to provide skills testing to out-of-state applicants, regardless of the state in which that training was obtained. FMCSA says this can allow applicants to obtain their CDL sooner, by scheduling the skills test in a state with shorter wait times. Wait times is something that we hear a lot of times, Tony, as a big obstacle to getting the CDL. So CDL owners, they can operate a CMV or commercial motor vehicle, a school bus on public roads and highways, but currently only for purposes of behind the wheel training, as long as the CDL holder is physically present in the front seat of the vehicle, or in the case of a passenger commercial vehicle, directly behind or in the first row. This MPR basically proposes an exception to this provision that would allow CLP holders who have passed the CDL skills test to operate a CMV for any purpose, provided a CDL holder is physically present in the CMV, the CLP driver has passed the CDL skills test, and the driver possesses documentary evidence from the testing state that they have passed the CDL skill test. So I'm kind of reading this as perhaps even allowing some of these CLPs to drive a route. We were talking about it, Tony. I don't know in terms of the school bus driver shortage, how many school districts or school bus companies, for that matter, have driver trainers that don't have anything better to do during the day than to sit behind a CLP in the school bus. They would obviously be needing to be out there and driving as well, but I think it just goes to show some of the work that's going on to try to address the driver shortage. It continues to be an issue. I think that it's getting better, but there's still some work to do. FMCSA also says this notice of proposed rulemaking proposes to accept CDL holders operating CMVs designed to carry passengers, including school buses. Remember, I said school buses were mentioned, from having a P endorsement when the CMV is empty of passengers and the driver is transporting the CMV from the manufacturer to the distributor or to tow away operation. So, yeah, as I was just mentioning, perhaps not with kids on board, but certainly to help with some of these other instances when there's a lack of school bus drivers available to do some of these operations, and better being able to utilize some of these learner's permit holders. So, of course, FMCSA, they're saying that they believe that this proposal will improve efficiency and convenience of CDL issuance, provide flexibility for CLP holders who have demonstrated their abilities to safely operate a CMV by passing the CDL skills test, and improve highway safety. Ensuring the integrity of third-party CDL knowledge testing and enhance flexibility in the transport of empty passenger CMVs from the manufacturer to the distributor. So, maybe that doesn't affect everybody, but as we were talking, Tony, certainly I think a lot of the contractors, this would be big news for them to digest.
Yeah, driver training is definitely one of the large issues out there, Ryan. I know, especially on the CDL side, there's always that rub, right? How do we get them through the process? How do we get them trained and then not leave the operation after you've invested so much money and time and energy, and they go off to work another job that isn't school transportation related, right? There's this always ongoing kind of churn that's happening. Again, when we catch up with Jennifer a little later, want to talk to her too, because she had reclassified her employees to get paid higher wages based on that reclassification of job difficulty. So, maybe there's some tiebacks too to talk about the impact of that, correlating also to some of these things happening with the licensing as well. So quite curious to see what the nation thinks out there. Guys, if you guys are doing anything innovative on the CDL driver training side, don't forget, you can reach out to us. Email us at info at stnmedia.com, like School Transportation News, STN, guys. So stnmedia.com. Definitely love to hear from you, to hear, what is happening in your operation? How are you dealing with driver shortage? How are you dealing with driver training? Maybe safety training is a big area you guys are emphasizing in. We want to hear about it. We'd love to talk a little more about it on the podcast, kind of bring up some ideas. If you're doing anything innovative, really love to hear from you, nation, and talk more about it. All right, in just a second, going to be talking with Jennifer Vobis, Executive Director of Transportation at Clark County Unified. But before we do that, we have a special message from TransFinder. Do you remember a time when you could just cherry pick the best solution to run your school transportation operation? The best routing software may be one company. The best parent app could be another company. Those days are over. TransFinder said the old way of doing business doesn't work for today's busy and burdened school transportation departments. They need one partner, one solution. TransFinder has embraced this approach for years now, building award-winning solutions like Route Finder Plus, the driver app Wayfinder, parent app Stop Finder, and inventory management solution Service Finder. They also have field trip management solutions, Trip Finder, and Viewfinder, which provide critical routing information to other stakeholders in the district. Add to this TransFinder's award-winning hardware and industry's best support and service. You have the ingredients that make up one partner, one solution. It's not just a slogan. It's TransFinder's way of doing business. Learn more by emailing getplus@transfinder.com or calling 800-373-3609. That's 800-373-3609. Remember, one partner, one solution. All right, School Transportation Nation, we have a special guest of the podcast this week, Miss Jennifer Vobis, Executive Director of Transportation in Clark County, Nevada, also known as Las Vegas. Jennifer, welcome. Are you like reeling from the Super Bowl? You guys just had it in Vegas, and I know where your transportation offices are. You're like right down the road. I mean, like you literally can see Allegiant Stadium. You like feel the energy from the Super Bowl?
Yes, absolutely. You know, it was exciting. It's been an exciting year for Vegas in general. We've had Formula One earlier this year, and we also had the Super Bowl. This is great for us. We have a lot of pro sports teams now. We're actually becoming like a real city.
Like a mecca. Well, we were talking about the Super Bowl hangover, and maybe you guys had a few too many drinks at the Super Bowl, but one of the things that happens this time of year, which many transportation departments might feel, is a lot of drivers call out sick. Sorry, I can't come in. I mean, that seems to be a real systemic problem every year. You were saying in previous years, it was over 315 drivers called out sick the day after Super Bowl. That is a big number.
It is huge. You know, we have about 1,500 drivers. So it is relative, but it is a big call out number for us. A big call out number for us is 200. So 315 really, you know, just puts a stress on operations. But I talk to other departments, not just transportation, but I talk to schools and food services, and everybody seems to have what I refer to as the Super Bowl flu. You know, it's just I don't think it's specific or unique to Vegas, but I do think, yeah, it is a problem.
Yeah, and especially with the Super Bowl being in Las Vegas, you know, it has this halo effect of impacting transportation in this kind of strange, precarious way, which, you know, many of you out there in School Transportation Nation land probably are like nodding your head like, yep, this happened to us too. So we thought it, you know, opportune to bring Jennifer on, talk about it since all the action Super Bowl happening, Chiefs, Niners. I don't know who you were rooting for. At this recording, we don't know who won, but we'll find out soon. But definitely exciting times. So talk to me about what Clark County is doing. I know we had identified a few years ago when you were chosen as the 2022 Transportation Director of the Year for STN that you had a very progressive driver initiative where you got your drivers reclassified in terms of the difficulty of their job to help with their pay grading. So you're able to give everybody a raise across the board. Now you're a few years in on this. What has that outcome been? Have you been able to sustain your drivers? I know out of the gate, you got a lot of positive press, which drove more applications. Has that kind of tapered off? Have you seen it steady? Now, granted, we've seen inflation increase exponentially. So I'm not sure the school district can turn on a dime with pay with regards to inflation either. So maybe it's just a great hedge. You didn't realize how good you were when you did it, but here we are. What does that look like for you? Where are you at with this project?
So I'm going to tell you, we were able to sustain our driver vacancy. As you know, I called probably crying. I cried to a lot of people. When I started this position, we were at a 250 driver short.
250? That's a lot.
Yeah, we were
out of 1,500. So you had basically 1,250. Yeah. And this is not backups. This is just to maintain service.
Yes. So it was a lot. Again, I always talk about how fortunate I am. I have such good leadership and such strong support with the upper leadership in our district. So when I came to them and I said, here are our pain points. Our pain points are no different than any other district, but what we need to do is this is an opportunity for us to address it. Our pain points are our pay. Our pain points are bell time, right? And our pain points are retention. So when we were able to reclass the drivers and get them higher pay, it helped us tremendously. We saw our applicant pool just skyrocket. I am here to tell you right now, our vacancy is less than 60. We've maintained around 50 to 60 driver vacancy throughout the last couple of years, which is great. We can operate with that. We can figure it out. We just been having job fairs. Last week, we had 100 people apply as a result of the job fair. So we're still seeing the momentum from that. We were also able to take care of bell times. So we were able to do a true 3-tier bell time. And that has helped our vacancy as well.
That's really exciting. So with regards to staffing, how does that also look for like other support staff? So that would be like maintenance professionals. So we see a lot of challenges with hiring mechanics and people in the trades. Are you experiencing the same situation there at the garage level?
We do. We have some vacancies, but they're not what they used to be. Before I took this position, the mechanics were also reclassed in order to address that, right? So we have a fleet of over 1,900 buses. So we need mechanics, and we need mechanics who are well paid and well educated and well trained in their craft. And I was lucky to step into that. So I wasn't dealing with both a driver vacancy as well as a mechanic vacancy. And also back onto the pay in general for all support staff. We have an association, they are a union, they were able to negotiate an increase for our drivers at the beginning of this year. So they were able to negotiate a cost of living increase as well. So they got 8% this year.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, that compounds with the increase you were able to secure. Now, for those that might not be familiar with what you did in terms of reclassifying the drivers and mechanics, do you want to just give the audience just a quick once around on I'm a transportation director and I'm in a district. I'm like, how does one reclassify a driver? Like, what was that process like? What was that argument you had to make with the school administrator or the business official or whoever you're dealing with, probably the CFO, and multiple people presented to the school board? Like, what was that process for you?
So that's actually a great question because, we can all say that this person deserves a raise or this position deserves a raise. But what we really have to look at is the value of the position and also the scope of the position and the type of skills that position requires. So when you look at a bus driver, it's not just someone driving a bus, right? It's someone who has to go through a CDL test. They have to know about air brakes. They have to know about passenger. They have to adhere to the FMCSA guidelines. They have to adhere to the DOT guidelines. It's not just getting behind a wheel of a car. It's nothing like getting behind the wheel of a car and driving. It is a lot more. They have to be able to identify any defects on the bus before they drive it. There's a level of safety. You're carrying 80 passengers, but not just passengers, right? You're carrying 80 people who are very precious cargo to a lot of people. So I had to present and really highlight the value and the skills required that a driver has to have in order to do their job. And the importance of the job. The job is not just taking kids to and from school. Like, kids depend on the bus to get to school. So we can put a lot of our resources, and as we should, into the classroom. But if we don't put our resources in those ancillary services like food service and transportation, students are not going to learn. They're not either going to be able to get there to learn, or they're not going to have a full stomach to learn. So again, that talking about the value of the position.
How do you get the ball over the line? Basically, how did you get it done? I think that's what I'm getting at, right? Like, if I'm a director, I'm like, how do I actually get this done to help my drivers, help my mechanics, maybe address this systemic issue that's in the industry? Because very few people have done what you did. And I know when this came out originally, many directors were like, I need Jennifer's phone number. How did she do this? Like, I need to know how. Like, so I don't know. You got the secret? Like, how did you make this thing fly?
I built a really good business case for it. So, like I said, but also I looked at what the industry and other commercial vehicle drivers were making. I looked at what our public transit system was making. I also compared, like, yes, they may make less, but they have a job for 12 months. Our drivers only have a job for 9 months, right? So I was able to look at what the industry standard was. And we have an advantage here in Clark County because we have the tourism. So we're not just talking about public transit. We're talking about charter motor coach companies. We're talking about limo companies. We're talking about the airport has CDL drivers that transports people. So I had a good base to look at what our industry standard here is in Las Vegas and make the case that bus drivers should be equally paid as them, if not better, because of who they are transporting.
Well, that sounds like the double-edged sword to some degree, because you got a lot of competition trying to take your drivers that are well-trained at the airport, at the limo companies, at the coach companies, at the transit. Like, they're all looking for, hey, I get paid $1 more an hour over here, and they leave you. So you have to make that job competitive. And also, like you said, if it's more challenging because they're not dealing with packages or things that are quick, you're dealing with children. So also, I'm sure the drivers have an emotional connection to the children, and there's some elements there that take a very special person to take on that job and take that role. But yeah, bravo on that. That's exciting. But I can imagine the stresses because you have all these, we'll call them competitors or other job seeking entities that are trying to woo your drivers and mechanics away.
Absolutely. And that was part of my business case, is that we have to either look at one of two things. We have to work with the community to determine, are we going to cut services, which other districts did at the time, or are we going to continue to provide the level of services that our community was used to? And if so, we do have to be competitive because we also have Amazon out here. And as an Amazon driver, you don't need a CDL, but because we have small Amazon vans, but you do, packages dropping off, that's not as, in my opinion, well, that's important because I love my Amazon packages, as not as important as a student. But that was part of my business case, is that we will always lose drivers if we are not competitive. And because we provide the in-house training, they can come here, get trained, obtain the CDL, and eventually leave us if we do not make sure that they are well paid and they are invested in this position.
Got it. Okay, kind of shifting gears a bit. It's still more in the driver workforce development spaces. So I know you've taken on a few electric vehicles, and you've got those in your fleet now for what, about 6-8 months, maybe a little longer now?
Yes.
Okay, and how many do you have? How many electric vehicles are you running, buses?
We have 3 electric vehicles right now. We are right now working with our NV Energy, our utility company, and we are going to be carrying 25 more in the next year and a half.
Are you using grant dollars to procure those?
We are, yes.
Yeah. Were you part of the EPA Clean School Bus Grant? Is that the money you were awarded out of that?
Yes. We have 2 different grants going on for our EV. We have one from the Environmental Protection Agency here in Nevada, and then we also have the Clean Energy Grant.
Great. So 25 more. And is it type C, type D?
It's type C.
Type C. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, not that there's an engine in the front anyway anymore. It's more like the shape of the bus, right? So you got to make that determination. Okay, great. And then you're building in. I know there were some challenges, obviously, with putting in infrastructure, and you just talked about working with your utility. So what is that time horizon to take a fleet of that many buses, and now you're starting to inject electric based on the government funding? What's that process to get the infrastructure queued up and ready for Clark County? And you have multiple yards, so you're identifying one yard that you're going to maintain these out of. And is that the St. Rose yard? No, different yard.
No. So one of the things that we have to look at with electric vehicles is exactly that, how they'll fit into our fleet. How can we incorporate them to our fleet? So I was looking at a yard. We have 5 yards here in Las Vegas, and I was looking at a yard. One of the things, we have to meet certain criteria, right? It has to be an underserved community. But when you're looking at the charge of a vehicle, how can we do regen? What are our routes that, regen? So a lot of stop and go, those kinds of things. And we identified a yard, and it's not the yard on St. Rose in Henderson. It's the yard closer to Green Valley in the area that has routes that are smaller routes, that not as long, because our average route is about 130 miles a day now. So, and we all know that really is not the range for an electric vehicle at this point. So we wanted to look at yards that had routes that were close by, that had a lot of stop and go for regen, and we identified that yard to take on the 25. We're just starting the bidding process with the contractors. So that will be going out to bid here shortly. And I'm excited to see how we can incorporate electric vehicles into our fleet.
Now, how is workforce development playing a part? Because I know that in the EPA grant, they had allocated a pretty significant amount of money per bus allocation for workforce development. Do you have those funds earmarked for any specific type of training? Is that part of your plan when you submit an application like that? What does that look like for you guys as you look at your driver and mechanic pool and how that impacts them?
So we are using the vendors in the company of the school buses to train our mechanics, because who better to train our mechanics than the people who built the buses, right? And who better to train our drivers than our own trainers? So we want to make sure that we're training, because we are not sure when, with bidding and routes and things that change every year. So we want to make sure that we have a core group of people who know how to work an electric bus and can train on an electric bus. And so we're training our staff in home, which is, kind of the Clark County School District way of doing things. We can figure it out, we can do it, and we can do it pretty well. So we do have that in mind. As we move forward and as we get closer, that's when we'll start really kind of putting our nose to the grindstone on that.
Got it. And now you have propane in your fleet as well?
We do not.
You do not yet. Are you considering propane?
We are not. Not at this time. So let me just say that. Just because we don't know where the electric buses will be and how they'll fit, I don't want to take on more than two, so to speak, right? So I want to be conservative on how we approach alternative fuel in our fleet. If we take on too much, I'm afraid it's going to be too soon. It'll be unsustainable. And, I don't want to see anyone fail or it be we took on and we couldn't make it successfuel.
Now, if I recall, your fleet is very interesting because you guys actually use biofuels. You're one of the few fleets that actually uses a biofuel. Is that still pretty prevalent within your fleet?
Yes, 100% of our fleet.
100% of the fleet is using biofuels. Can you explain that a little bit for people, what that exactly means?
So we do use biodiesel fuel. So not being a mechanic, we do 100% of our fleet is biodiesel fuel.
Does that affect your fuel price positively, negatively?
No, I don't. No, I don't think it does. I think we use a DEF additive in our fuels. And so we have the diesel fuel and we use the DEF additive for it. But no, I think we actually still get some rebate because we use biodiesel.
Biodiesel, yeah. They're blending some bio product into the diesel itself. Was it maybe B20? I can't remember the name of the class. B20, yeah, okay. That's what I thought it was. So I'm assuming that's 20% of the fuel blend is bio product. Okay, great. Yeah, again, not a fuel expert here, but just trying to get it sorted. But yeah, okay, that's interesting. So yeah, you got a very interesting makeup of green energy. Do you recall why they chose to use biofuel? Was that because of some incentive or rebate, or what was the motivator? And I know you inherited the fleet, but was there any reason they chose that?
No, I don't know, I guess is the question. I'm sure there was a really good reason. I do think that it's a cleaner burn is my understanding when I look at, we don't have big exhaust like diesel. When you think of diesel, we don't see that plume of smoke as our buses are going through. It is a lot cleaner of a burn as far as fuel. I was not here I wasn't even in the department, believe it or not, when that decision was made. I would have to say that decision was made probably pre-2010.
2010, yeah, pre-2010. Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's a unique aspect of your fleet. And again, Ryan and I we were just talking about it. It's like you being the largest publicly owned fleet in the United States, obviously non-contracted. Mm-hmm. So, right. But it's a very unique characteristic to Clark County, and obviously 130-mile average drive. That's a pretty decent time frame for kids to be on the buses as well. Looking at technology, are you looking at E-rate and Wi-Fi and things like that? Is that an area we've seen the FCC throw out some money? The E-rate application window is coming up very soon. Are you looking at applying there?
Yes, I am. That's my next project, is to dig deep. All of our buses are equipped with Wi-Fi because they're equipped with cameras, and our cameras are a live look-in system. In order to have live look-in, you have to have the PEP link and the cell service. So we do have that. I love it. I can't say enough positive about it, but we do have Wi-Fi, and I am interested in applying for the debate.
That's exciting. Well, lots happening in Clark County, and we hope you recover from your Super Bowl hangover quickly, and all those drivers.
Oh, I don't have one. I will be at work.
Oh, yeah, I know. We won't call it the hangover. We'll call it the flu, right? We hope you get better soon. I'm sure everybody is going to have a miraculous recovery the next day, right?
Yeah, I promise you I will be here on Monday to make sure that we are here and up and running, and for students out at bus stops at 6:30 in the morning.
We're wonderful. Well, thank you so much for jumping on with us and giving us a quick update on what's happening in Clark County. I know Ryan Gray has talked you into speaking at STN Expo in Reno this summer. Anything you want to leave with the audience with? What are you talking about? What are you noodling on topic wise?
Oh, that charming Ryan, he did ask me and I can't say no to him. So, I am thinking there are so many things going on. And maybe I talk about Wi-Fi on buses and how we're using it, getting closer to the electric vehicles, looking at bell times. Driver retention is a big thing right now for us. How are we keeping our drivers happy? With 5 locations, spread out 5 locations, drivers retention is a little more challenging for us, or having that employer connection. That's also a big thing too. So sure, he has some ideas too on what he wants me to talk about.
Yeah, we'll keep brainstorming with you, but you're a fountain of knowledge there. Lots of great insights. Thank you, Jennifer, for being a part of the podcast, and you have a great rest of your week, dear.
You too. Thank you both. Thanks.
Guys, this is a great podcast. Thank you so much to Jennifer for coming on, sharing your wisdom, talking a little bit about what's happening in Las Vegas post Super Bowl. I know a lot of you probably watch the Super Bowl, but exciting stuff. And definitely want to thank Mr. Ryan Gray for the editorial and news headline update. Always appreciated. And thanks to our sponsors, TransFinder and Zoom. Couldn't do it without those sponsors, guys. So go check them out. If you email them, let them know you heard about them on the STN podcast. Always good to get the love back to the sponsors. And guys, STN Expo, make sure and sign up. Lock in that super early bird. Save $200. We have deadlines coming up in March and April on that, so don't wait. Lock in your seat. We got our Transportation Director Summit. We got the Bus Technology Summit. We got the Green Bus Summit, Transportation Director, everything you could want to get out of the training for your operations, safety training, operational training, meet technology partners, maintenance training, head start, special needs. We got it all. So stnonline.com for all the latest news and headlines you guys need every day. Some analysis as well from Taylor and Ryan and the rest of our editorial team. Guys, we love you. We'll see you next week, Nation.